Thanks for tuning in. My name is Ben Moffat, and I'm sitting in the old Coombe house at Crosscurrents Heritage Center at Tippasawkee Farm in southwest Wisconsin. I'll be sharing family stories and songs about three remarkable women who are our guiding lights here at Crosscurrents. The first will be my grandmother, Camilla Coombe Kirkpatrick. Second will be her younger sister, Lottie Coombe Robertson, and they are granddaughters of John Coombe, the man who established this farm in 1838 on the site of Ho-Chunk and Meskwaki seasonal villages. The third will be Camilla's daughter and my mother, Mary Kirkpatrick Moffat. Here's how we all line up on a very abbreviated family tree. John Coombe, originally from England, is the first European-American settler in Richland County, Wisconsin. One of his sons, Warner, became a doctor, and he had two daughters, Camilla and Lottie. Camilla had two children, a son, John Coombe Kirkpatrick, and my mother, Mary. Mary had two children, my older brother, Bruce, and myself. So let's get started with Camilla. She was also known as Camille. My cousins called her Auntie Cam. For me and my brother Bruce, she was always just Gram. Here she is at 5 years old with her parents, Dr. Warner Coombe and Louetta Dooley Coombe. And you can see that already at 5, she's quite a beauty. She was proud of herself and proud of her appearance. Of this picture, my mother said, "Imagine chestnut-colored hair." Here she is as a sophomore in college. She attended Lawrence College, now Lawrence University in Appleton, Wisconsin, and then she went to the University of Wisconsin at Madison, where she studied English literature and developed quite a colorful vocabulary. For example, in response to, say, burnt toast, she might say, "Anathema." Who says anathema? She did some acting at the university and played Rosalind in William Shakespeare's As You Like It. One of her professors suggested she continue with theater. She didn't, but she channeled that talent into her animated storytelling. She captivated us, her grandchildren, nieces and nephews and others, with her tales of John Coombe's heroic adventures and his encounters with the native people, right down here on the flat by the river. He was her grandfather, and he was her hero. He died before she was born. I can still see her face and her gestures, and hear the sound of her voice as she tells us how John Coombe, a short, stocky fella, wrestled a professional wrestler to a draw in an all-day battle. She told us how he built his own cabins, earned the respect of the native people, always did the right thing, never failed, never made a single mistake. She was proud of him, proud of her family, and his boys. She made us feel proud too. For me, John Coombe was part of the pioneer pantheon. Davy Crockett, Daniel Boone, John Coombe. Camilla died when I was 21, and I have to confess, I never really developed an adult relationship with her. While she was alive, I never really saw her as a three-dimensional person. I loved her dearly. She was Gram. Thankfully, I've been able to learn a lot more about who she was as a person from conversations with my mother, my grandfather, and my cousin Janet. I also learned quite a bit from some papers I found in a box down in the basement. It's one of several labeled Camilla Unsorted. Here's how that came to be. When Camilla died in 1977, all of her things were just left in their drawers and closets. And then when her husband, Jack Kirkpatrick, died in 1988, 11 years later, My mother had to close up the big house they were living in Richland Center. Mom simply put Camilla's things in cardboard boxes, labeled them Camilla Unsorted, and stashed them in the basement. Bruce and I still haven't been through them all, let alone sorted them. Clearly, there's a lot to learn still about Camilla. Here's what I do know. After college, she signed up with an agency to teach school all over the Midwest. She said that she went wherever they paid the most. Now, she must have had a boyfriend in every one of these little towns, as the next story, told to me partly by my mom, partly by my grandfather, makes clear. In the 19-teens, Camilla's mother became ill, and Camilla gave up teaching and moved back to their family home, which at that time was in Richland Center, so she could help out. The Coombe home was right across the street from the Kirkpatrick home of Kirkpatrick Cheese Incorporated. And my grandfather, Jack Kirkpatrick, took one look at her and told his older sisters, "I've met the woman I'm going to marry." Well, to plot his courtship strategy and to get to know her better, he chatted up her younger sister, Lottie. Jack told me he played jacks with her on the sidewalk and would ask her about her sister. Well, the strategy obviously worked. And when she decided to marry him, she wrote letters to all of her beaux all over the Midwest. My mom told me there were 14 letters in all. She gave the huge stack of envelopes to Jack to take to the post office. Mom said it was a proud day for Jack Kirkpatrick, an errand he was happy to run for Camilla. They married in 1923, and Camilla became a housewife, a mother, and an active volunteer in the community. They had 2 children, my mother Mary, and a son, John Coombe Kirkpatrick, who tragically died young, leaving his wife Anne with 2 young children, Janet and John. Now, Mom sensed that Camilla would have liked to have expanded her horizons beyond Richland County, Wisconsin. She would have loved to have gone to Europe. But Jack never wanted to stray far from his cheese business. It was his life. Occasionally, they'd go to Florida in the winter or come visit us in California. But Jack was always restless to get back to the business, and he would call the office every day to check in. Camilla was the last of John Coombe's grandchildren to be born in this house. In fact, as far as I know, she's the last person born in this house. So it always had a special place in her heart. In 1951, her children were out of the house and grown, and the last of John Coombe's children died, and the farm here was passed down to 16 Coombe relatives. The court ordered an auction, and Camilla asked Jack to bid on it. Jack told me that as the price rose, he would turn to Camilla and say, "Do you want it?" "Yes." The price rose further. "Do you really want it?" "Yes." Yes, yes. The answer was always yes. Jack outbid the others, and the farm was theirs. This house is what Camilla needed to fill her life, to give it purpose, and she worked hard to restore it. With help from her indefatigable cleaning lady, Pluma Mayfield, her son John and his wife Anne, better known as Anno, and many others, they worked to refresh and modernize this place. The privy, the outhouse out back, and the kerosene lamps were decommissioned, and for the first time in the 1950s, this house had indoor plumbing and electricity. Graham carefully, gently washed the original wool carpet there in the parlor that's still on the floor. She washed it by hand. She also washed by hand the lace curtains which unfortunately had to be replaced. She brought this elegant old house back to life. And so it became a weekend place, a vacation place for us grandchildren and our cousins to explore. And it also became, according to one of my mom's high school classmates named Jean Burkett, this place became the site of many a wild party hosted by John and Anno. It was also the family gathering place, drawing us all back. Many important family gatherings happened here. I'm thinking particularly of the 1963 100th birthday of this old house and the big family reunion we had here in 1983. But Camilla knew that this place was important not just for our family, but for a larger community. And she would often give tours to local community groups. In fact, late in their lives, Camilla and Jack approached the Wisconsin State Historical Society to see whether it would accept this farm as a donation. The society said, yes, we would. We'd be happy to. And guess what we'll do? We'll dismantle this old house and move it across the state to Old World, Wisconsin. Well, for Camilla, that was anathema. She and Jack would never agree to that. For them, the house and the place were inseparable. It's about the place, just as it was for John Coombe, the Meskwaki, and the Ho-Chunk. Late in her life, Camilla developed cancer, and she battled it for over a dozen years. This woman, so proud of her appearance, had to endure multiple surgeries in which her jawbone was cut away, leaving a big dent in the side of her face. She tried to cover it up with frilly scarves and charm, but you knew her pride was suffering. She lost sensation in her mouth and lips, and so she was embarrassed to eat with other people. But whenever she got carried away with a story, her eyes would flash with the old magic, and we would be spellbound. When Camilla was 82 years old, my cousin Janet described her this way. Camilla has more energy and interest than many a younger person. Her eyes, large behind her glasses lenses, spark with merriment, haughtiness, scorn, or anger. Her eyebrows, flexible, skitter over her brow as she talks. And when, as she often does, she shakes back her shoulders, thrusts up her chin, arms bent, elbows clenched, and strides out briskly, she seems to be telling us, I still have a few good kicks left in me yet. Camilla died in 1977, and her husband Jack took up the torch, becoming the principal caretaker of this place until he died 11 years later. And now a song for Camilla. According to my mother, this was one of her favorites. It reflects her love of English literature. It's by the Elizabethan poet and playwright Ben Jonson. Here, in honor of Camilla, is Drink to Me Only with Thine Eyes. Drink to me only with thine eyes, and I will pledge with wine. Or leave a kiss within the cup, and I'll not ask for wine. The thirst that from the soul doth rise, doth ask a drink divine. But might I of Jove's nectar sip, I would not change for thine. I sent thee late a rosy wreath, not so much honoring thee as giving it a hope that there it would not withered be. But thou thereon didst only breathe and sent'st it back to me. Since when it grows and smells, I swear, not of itself but thee. And now on to Lottie. She was born at Eagle Corners and raised in Blue River and Richland Center. 9 years younger than Camilla, she was a distinctly different person. Very much a tomboy growing up. Here she is in her flapper days. That's Lottie on the left and Camilla on the right. Where Camilla was straight-laced, high-strung, and a warrior, Lottie was relaxed, expansive, and carefree. She went to the University of Wisconsin at Madison and was co-captain of the women's basketball team. My cousin Dagmar told me that Lottie remained obsessed with basketball the rest of her life. One time, Dagmar went down to visit her in the spring. Now, Dagmar is not a sports fan. But Lottie forced her to watch March Madness, the collegiate basketball tournament on TV. My cousin Gail is the one who told me that Lottie was a flapper and that she was drawn to young men of questionable reputation. Lottie's father and Camilla were relieved when Lottie met Charles Robertson, because Charlie, as he was known, was a cut above the other men that she was hanging out with. They married and settled in Lafayette, Indiana, where they had 2 children, Louetta and Malcolm, and 6 grandchildren. And the grandchildren always called them Lala and Cha-Cha. Here they are at their 50th wedding anniversary with Louetta and Mal. Here's a shot of Lottie with her father, Warner. Doesn't it look like Lottie has just cracked him up? It would be so Lottie. I did develop an adult relationship with both Lottie and her husband, Charlie, because in the 1970s and 1980s, I often crisscrossed the country in car, and so I would often stop in and visit them. I was shocked, in a good way, at how open Lottie was, how different she was from her sister Camilla. I remember one breakfast when Charlie brought down Kahil Gibran's The Prophet, and I'm eating breakfast, and they're taking turns reading passages to me. I particularly remember this one that they read. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you, for life goes not backward, nor tarries with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children, as living arrows, are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness, For even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he loves also the bow that is stable. I discussed ideas with Lottie and Charlie, and for me as a young person, that was thrilling. Camilla and Lottie were alike in the sense that they were great storytellers, just amazing. In fact, many of the stories I'm telling, come from notes I took in my 20s and 30s on those visits. I remember being at breakfast table and Lottie was there with her old dog, Franzi, named after Franz Liszt. And while I ate a late breakfast, Lottie would sit there drinking coffee, smoking a chain of cigarettes, and spinning out her stories enthusiastically. She had a spacer that she used in her telling. It would go like this. When I was a girl growing up in Blue River, and so on and so forth, I could ride the train up and down the line, and so on and so forth, and visit my friends, and so on and so forth. She also would stretch out the sounds of certain words, like if she were referring to her grandson, Taggart, it was Taggart. Very expressive of the lively young boy he was at that time. As a girl in Blue River, Lottie had remarkable freedom to move around. I don't think any little girl today, or little boy for that matter, has the freedom she had. Like I said, she could take the train up and down the line alone. Why not? All the conductors knew her, so did most of the passengers. So she could go up to Lone Rock or to Wazeeka to visit her friends. And she had her own pony that she could ride freely about. She told me that once her father asked her to bring in the herd of cattle from a distant pasture, but he underestimated how long it would take her. She remembered seeing him in the distance, through the dusk and dust, holding a lantern like a torch, lighting her way home. She was excellent on a horse. Her father said that he tried to hire men to herd his cattle, but no one could do it as well as Lottie. And when he got calls in the middle of the night for a medical emergency, it was Lottie who hitched up the horses to the buggy and drove him to see his patients. And then, still a young girl, she assisted him with his patients. So at age 10 or 11, she was witnessing childbirth, amputations, death. And then she would drive him to his appointments. She was 12 years old when Dr. Coombe bought the first automobile in Blue River. It came on a boxcar, and a man came with it to explain to him how to drive the car. He said, "Oh no, don't teach me. Teach my daughter Lottie here. If she learns, I'll learn." And sure enough, one time the doctor, his wife, and Lottie went up to Appleton to pick up Camilla from college. Before heading back to Blue River, they had dinner together in a restaurant, and everyone had chicken, except for Lottie. Everyone got food poisoning except for Lottie. So they built up the driver's seat with cushions, and Lottie, with her sister's head in the lap, drove them all home. She was 12 years old. This next story is famous in our family. I'll tell it the way I remember hearing it. President Taft came to visit Blue River, Wisconsin, on the train. Blue River was a larger town at that time. Dr. Coombe, because he owned the only automobile in Blue River, was given the honor of driving the President of the United States around town and showing him the sights. So naturally, the day before, Warner washed his car, waxed it, polished it up, and closed it away in his garage for safekeeping overnight. The next morning, he opens the garage and it's spattered with mud. Unbeknownst to him, Lottie had taken it out in the middle of the night for a spin in the fields. Besides being a tomboy and a bit of a hellraiser, Lottie had an artistic streak. My cousin Gail, herself an artist, told me that Lottie was blessed with an innate understanding of visual harmony, color, and balance, and she had an admirable sense of style. Gail wrote that she thought Lottie could have had a career in art or design, but women didn't do that in those days. Lottie did design the last house she and Charlie lived in a Frank Lloyd Wright style with high windows and black granite windowsills. My cousin Dagmar saw those. She'd never seen anything like them, and she asked Lottie about them. Lottie said, "I'm not going to spend my time fixing chipped windowsills. These I can simply wipe with a dusting cloth." In many ways, that sums Lottie up. A keen sense of style and entirely practical. Late in life, Lottie was picking flowers in her garden when a mail truck got loose and careened down the hill without a driver. The emergency brake wasn't set right or something. It hit Lottie, knocked her over. Her neighbor, who witnessed it from her kitchen window, said that Lottie popped back up like a Pop-Tart. The postal truck was totaled, but Lottie survived. Her injuries were so severe, though, they had to take her by ambulance from Lafayette all the way to Indianapolis, and along the way they gave her anesthetics. But when it was time to take her into surgery, they realized they couldn't give her any more anesthetics because they'd given her so much on the ambulance ride. So Lottie went into surgery and had her leg amputated with no painkillers. She said that what helped her endure that pain and the psychological stress of phantom leg syndrome after were the experiences she had assisting her father on his rounds. And so she lived the rest of her life in a wheelchair with an artificial leg. But like Camilla, Lottie's spirit was undimmed. She used to wheel her great-grandchild, also named Charlie, around on the back of her wheelchair as she wheeled around the house. It's a memory he still cherishes. Here she is at our family reunion in 1983. That's me and Bruce on either side, and that cake is one that she and her daughter Luetta had made as a replica of the house. And that photo was taken right out here on the porch. I remember the last night of that reunion. Lottie was in the bedroom and Luetta was helping her to get ready for bed, and I suddenly realized that I was going to be leaving early and wouldn't get a chance to say goodbye to her. So I knocked on the door and I hear Lottie's voice say, "Come on in. I'm just taking off my leg." So I go in and sure enough, she's sitting in her chair. Her leg is off. She's in her slip. Frankly, I was thrown off balance. But Lottie was completely unperturbed. She was just Lottie. I'm going to tell you one last story about her because it's about this place. When she was a girl in Blue River, she would often get on her pony, ride across the bridge, and come visit her grandmother and aunts here at this house. This would be John Coombs' wife and her daughters. And this one particular time, the grandmother and some of the daughters were gone, and somebody, I forget whom, probably one of the daughters, was here alone, and she had taken it upon herself to clear some of the clutter out of the rooms, the attic, the basement, and she was loading it out on the lawn, and she asked Lottie to help, and so Lottie helped her. They moved out old tools, old furniture, boxes of books, boxes of letters, receipts from the 19th century. They had it all out on the lawn, and the grandmother comes back. She looks at it, says, "Put it back. Put it back." Bruce and I are now dealing with it, along with Camilla Unsorted. We're sorting it, cataloging it, and scanning it into a digital archive. You can say it's about the place, but it's also about the stuff. And now here's a song for Lottie. Her husband Charlie was lifelong friends with Hoagie Carmichael, the great Tin Pan Alley singer-songwriter. Charlie and Hoagie were fraternity brothers together at the University of Indiana, and there they had rival big bands. But Charlie realized the musician's life wasn't for him. He wanted something a bit more stable, so he turned to the law and became a lawyer and a judge. But he was an excellent piano player, and he and Lottie loved to entertain. My cousin Heather remembers several parties ending with Charlie playing piano and singing, and Lottie and everyone else singing along to Hoagie Carmichael's classic song, Stardust. So here it is, in tribute to Lala and Cha-Cha. These two sisters, one very straight-laced and worrisome, the other relaxed, open, and joyful. inspired me and Bruce with the magic of this place and its larger significance in the stories of the native people, the European migration, the mastodons, the glaciers. As we move forward, Bruce and I try to keep in mind one of Lottie's key sayings: may I do my best for all concerned. Well, Bruce and I gained a love of this place, its stories and stuff from Camilla and Lottie. From our mother, we gained both a broader and a deeper perspective. She was born and raised in Richland Center, and her first memory of coming to this farm was being driven out here by her parents to visit her great uncle William Coombe. He was the last surviving child of John Coombe and his wife Sarah, and he lived here all alone. Mom said that she was frightened of him a bit. He had a big beard, and he always dressed in formal wool English coats. If you imagine a little girl being forced to hug an old man in a wool coat. She said that the dining table was covered with kerosene lamps, probably to assist him in his reading, because most of the books here seem to have belonged to him. She said that as a result of those lamps, the walls and ceiling of this room were covered with soot. Her cousin Malcolm, Lottie's son, also said that old Uncle Will didn't warm that easily the young children, and that this room and the upstairs were cluttered with unread magazines and newspapers. Now, Mary, like most of us, is a mix of her parents' personalities. Not as outgoing or vivacious as Camilla, nor as serious or shrewd at business as her father Jack. My cousins remember her as being observant and quiet. My friends remember her as a wonderful hostess. She definitely inherited the artistic streak and a keen aesthetic sense. She did a lot of drawings and paintings, and these are some of her many linoleum block prints. The last one is a letterhead that she did for this farm that we still make use of today. She also wrote poems, tried to write a play, and did complete 2 children's books, but she only sent one out one time. Self-promotion was never her strong suit, and she has a fierce inner critic. I always knew that if I wanted to do something around the place that would affect the appearance, I'd better run it by the aesthetic committee, namely Mary. Like Camilla, Mom found small-town Midwest life a bit constricting, so she went to college on the East Coast, and then after graduation, stayed in New York City for a bit, writing ad copy. Then she married her first boyfriend, Sam Moffat, and Bruce was born in 1953 up in Massachusetts. Then the family moved to California, and I was born there in 1956. Our parents divorced in 1961. Mom, Bruce, and I would return to Wisconsin and this farm every summer, and many Christmases too. It's where we were most likely to reconnect with our cousins. Here's a short story for you dog lovers out there. I think you'll appreciate it. Our cousin Kim Coleflat and his wife Kathy used to drive up here from Chicago with their sweet old dog Petunia every 4th of July. This was the late 90s, early 2000s. They'd do it because poor Petunia was afraid of fireworks. After Graham died, Mom became co-owner of this farm with her father, Jack. But Jack was the principal torchbearer, and being an older guy, he was reluctant to spend money on the place. He also had trouble attracting and keeping good farmers, and so the place started to look run down. Mom tried to ask him for tips on farm management, but as smart as Jack Kirkpatrick was, he wasn't always the best teacher. And so it really wasn't until he died in 1988 that she began her crash course in farm management. She was 61 years old. It was an overwhelming task. I remember that she had files on the history of the place, the care for old paper, fabrics, that sort of thing. She had files on the pastures, the fields, the wells, the woodlot. She tried to track the productivity of the milk cows with a chart. She also tried to ride herd on the farmers and the workmen who she hired, but many of them tried to take advantage of her. They saw her as an old woman from the West Coast, not someone with deep roots in Richland County. During those years, the late 80s, early 90s, there was a mild air of panic about this place. Sometimes not so mild. For example, if you set a glass down on a counter in the kitchen, it would slide. If you walked anywhere in this room, the glass in the big wooden case over there would shake and rattle. Carpenter ants were appearing in unexpected places. Could this whole place collapse around us? Bruce and I tried to help Mom as much as we could, but we were busy with our own lives. Bruce with his career and young family in DC and then later Costa Rica. Me with my performing and teaching in Hawaii. Thankfully, I had 3 months off in the summer and also could come during my long breaks at Christmas sometimes. Looking back, I realized we were fortunate to be able to learn alongside Mom. This is when Bruce and I really got deeper into what goes on here. Leases, budgets, invasive plants, and all the rest. We would get overwhelmed, but we could go away. But Mom dealt with it and worried about it nonstop. Bruce and I got a gradual education while she was taking her crash course. After Gramp died, Mom immediately put money into the place. New roof, new paint, new wiring, new furnace. She had an architectural study done. She also had the wisdom to hire a professional archivist named Lynn Lubkeman. And together with Lynn, Mom got almost all of the old fabrics, clothing, and documents into acid-free boxes. Mom's aesthetic sense is apparent in this room because she chose the wallpaper. The old wallpaper, put up in the 50s by her brother John and Anno, was faded and peeling off the walls. But as soon as Mom had this print put up, she criticized her own choice. Yes, it's of the period, William Morris, oak print, but John Coombe and his wife Sarah never would have chosen it. With the parlor wallpaper, untouched since the 1860s, Mom was more careful. It was also faded and peeling off the walls. She took a piece of it, had it scanned, and reprinted. But the rolls of new paper stuck around here for years until Bruce and I could finally have the house stabilized. This was done thanks to our miracle worker, master carpenter, Roger Bailey, and his helpers, Terry Parrish, and sometimes Roger's wife. It was a multi-year project. Roger did stabilizing in the crawl space here, in the basement, in the walls, ceilings, both attics. While we were working on the parlor, all the furniture was in here and we were living in a construction zone. But finally, the walls in the parlor were re-lathed, replastered, the new wallpaper put up, and in 2019, we had a parlor appreciation party. Here's Mom with me and Bruce at that party with our cousin John Frederick Kirkpatrick, who came all the way from Seattle with his wife Molly, specially for the event. It was a wonderful day. In the late 90s, Mom had the idea that we should convene a conference of scholars and experts in other fields to have a conference with this farm as the touchstone. It eventually came to be known as Crosscurrents, the Tipisaki Symposium. Mom's original idea was for it to take place at the turn of the millennium, but that was unrealistic. It took 5 years to plan, but it finally came off in the year 2003. It was a lot of work. It turned out to be a 2-day event. The first day and a half were at the University of Wisconsin-Richland campus in Richland Center with speakers and events. And then the afternoon of the second day, there were tours of this farm and the Ho-Chunk Nation farm in Muscadet, where people could see the bison herd and the mound group down by the river. Mom was in her mid-70s then and slowing down. I was her point person and kept the ball rolling when I was here and from afar. Kristen Clausen was instrumental in helping us achieve Mom's vision. And from the campus, Linda Gentis did a lot of heavy lifting as far as planning and organizing. From the Ho-Chunk Nation, Emma Snowball was their point person with a lot of help from Suzette Lemaire, and the Ho-Chunk made significant contributions to the event. Mark Cupp from the Lower Wisconsin State Riverway helped with the planning and was our MC, and the Ottman family of Blue River and many other local people chipped in as volunteers to make the whole thing go. Now, as we were planning the symposium, I remember being on the edge of burnout. And Mom kept coming up with great ideas. She wanted a video at the beginning. She wanted a choral concert at the end with music taken from the piano bench in the parlor. She wanted to commission an original piece of music of poems by the Richland Center poet Mary Rusty Mackenzie, set to music by Rusty's niece, Kathy Punwar. She wanted a book to come out of it with the scholars' papers and descriptions of all the events. I finally said I had to back away from these add-ons, as I called them, because for me, the schedule, the speakers, the breakout sessions, the buses, the tours, the publicity, the porta potties, they were all the balls I could keep up in the air at one time. Well, thankfully, Mom, with help from Linda, Kristen, and many others, pulled off those extras because, in looking back, they were what made the event so special, so rich, so deeply satisfying, and so expressive of Mary. It was more than just a dry gathering of scholars reading their papers. Along the way, Mom has given me and Bruce a lot of good guidance. For one thing, she said, what we do here should not be about ancestor worship. Honor, yes, but it's bigger than that. She also said, you will make mistakes. I think by that she meant, don't give your inner critic free rein. That advice has helped me a lot over the years. We do our best. I think we also learned, partly by watching her, the importance of pacing ourselves. If you get burned out, take a break. Get off the property for a while if you need to. After all, people have been gathering at this site for thousands and thousands of years. So we should be able to relax, stop, and savor it too. It's a beautiful place. More than anyone, it's our mother Mary who shapes Bruce and my vision for this place. Even more than Camilla and Lottie, she gave us the broader perspective, showing us that this place is bigger than us, bigger than our family. Yes, it holds the stories and stuff of our family. Those are just really specific examples of the settlement of the West. This place also holds the stories of the native people, the stories of the river, the plants, the animals, the soil. As you look around, just about every object tells a story, or at least hints at one. like the battle-scarred 300-year-old oak tree out front, or the paintings by John Coombs' daughters, a school bell, a stirrup, or a cannonball. Even the stones here have stories to tell. It is because of these three remarkable women, but especially our mother, that Bruce and I have set up Crosscurrents Heritage Center to preserve, protect, and share this special place. And now for Mary's song. Around 2014, Mom was already in assisted living then. I should add that she's doing well in memory care now. I was doing what we often do here, trying to impose order on the chaos that is this place. In particular, I was dealing with a shoebox full of cassette tapes. Now, in this box, there were a lot of tapes of music. My music, Mom's music, music given to us by friends and relatives. There were spoken word tapes of plays being read. There was a tape of Lottie trading stories with our neighbor, Billy Wannick. But one tape in particular caught my eye. It's labeled in Mary's handwriting and it says, "Where will I wander?" You're going to hear that recording now. It's Mary's voice, somewhat distorted, singing and speaking. The words will be on the screen.
Where will I wander? Will I wander? Will I go? Where will I go? And will I know all the roads that I must travel alone? Roads with crooked twists and turns, roads through forests of concerns, for which the whole heart yearns. How will I wander? How will I wander gaily and bravely? And will I carry memories that lighten my load? Will I take a cottage small, closed round by a gate and a wall, with a window that looks on the trees, and the lamp there for travelers to see? Will I take a cottage small, close round by a gate and a wall, a window that looks on the trees, and a lamp for travelers to see? This is a song which I wrote but did not write down, and so I'm recording it now on September 17th, 1981 for Bruce and Ben Moffat, with all love from their mother.
And so, as we continue to explore, interpret, and share this place, Bruce and I tried to take the best from these three women: Camilla, Lottie, and Mary, our guiding lights. Whether they intended to or not, they taught us that we don't really own this place. We are just the stewards, doing our best to care for it until we pass the torch. May we do our best for all concerned. Thank you for watching.